Pretty sure some of you have not seen this, but this is a working experiment project by OpenSSF. This is something I spoke about with Chris on this channel a few weeks ago. So it's open source project security baseline. This is basically targeted towards small organizations or where they really do not have the capacity to start going through the whole bulky regulations, frameworks, all of those big regulations and the documentation. So now say, okay, yeah, this is what we need to follow and this is what we need to put in place to make sure that we function well. So now, in terms of places where, in terms of organizations that are always operating within open source field, this is kind of like call it checklist or a check mark for the minimum. This is almost what you call like an MVP. You need to put in place to make sure that compliant at the same time, staying safe. So this originally was an Excel sheet. I think I still have it here. Was an Excel sheet. They just thought to now break it up to something very, very beautiful like this. I'm very sure you could say that you like this already. You can see that the latest version is still February 25th this year. There are basically 3 control levels and I think 8 categories. Which is access control, builder release, documentation, governance, the legal aspects, policy, security assessment, and vulnerability management. So I think those are basically the 8 external frameworks are like add-ons, lexicon, acknowledgements. This is just like a table of content. And if you look at it here, it says the open source project security baseline is a set of security criteria that projects should meet to demonstrate a strong security posture. It's not really for the big organizations, but at the same time, why there are levels to it is because even in a situation where you have small organizations, there are levels to it. Of course, I'll get that to you. I mean, it's already here. So yeah, control overview. The level 1 is just for basically, pet projects, just any code. It could be any code or no code project where you have maybe a less or minimal number of prior maintainers. Mostly, this particular project is targeted to be consumed by maintainers. So now, if you have very, very minimal maintainers or users, you fall into category of the level 1. Something you have, say for example, you have then level 2 is where you have a pet project that you're serious about, maybe something you work on a weekend, but it's still functional to a lot of people, and you have at least 2 maintainers and a small number of consistent users. You could say you have a consistent number of maybe 100 plus. That's consistent enough. And you've actually kind of like fall into the level 2 category. And for the level 3 categories are just, the big guys. And you have large number of consistent users. So stuff like Firefox, Mozilla. Some persons don't even know that Mozilla is an open source project. So now you have like different categories and different IDs for each control that you need to set up for each level or any level that you fall under. For example, level 1, when a user attempts to access a sensitive record resource, the project's version control system, the system must require the user to complete MFA process. So you would notice that everything here is must. I think part of their factors when they were discussing it was that there is no should. There are recommendations, but like these controls are stuff that you kind of like, they just go straight to the points, removing the whole stress of you starting to say, okay, you want to now go and find or do a research on this particular control. And do I really need to do this? Do I really fall into this category? As far as you fall into the level 1 category, you must kind of like put in place all of these controls. When you come down to level 2, so you have, I'll pick 1. When an official release is created, that release must be assigned a unique version identifier. That's something that is very, very logical, and we really do not expect a project with a sensitive number or a great deal of users not to have version IDs. But some persons might just carry this project as just something I do on the weekend. I don't need to pay too much attention to it. But like these controls help you to say, okay, yeah, these are stuff that you must actually just put in place. Coming down to level 3, let's pick 1. When a project has made a release, the project documentation must include a descriptive statement about the scope and the duration of support for each release. That's where you say, okay, yeah, we have this particular version or we have this particular release and it's only going to last for the next 3 years. And the EOL, which is the end of life, is going to be, yeah, so another control here is going to be still on the access control level 3. Yep. And another control here would be, let's pick this. While active, all changes to the project's code base must be automatically evaluated against the documented policy for malicious dependencies and non-vulnerabilities in dependencies, then blocked in the event of violations, except when declared or suppressed as non-exploitable. Most of the time, there are vulnerabilities that are kind of like fall into category of maybe they do not really have a proof of concept. So you really need to might not say, okay, kind of like let's overlook stuff like this. But at the same time, you have to make this known and you have to evaluate it against a policy that you have in place to make sure that you're actually tracing and kind of like following through with stuff like this. So I think this is a very, very bunch of the very long document that has all the controls. It kind of like covers, it's still a work in progress, but it kind of like covers all the basic nitty-gritty that you need to put in place with, especially if it's an open source project. At the same time, when you want to feel like, yeah, most times engineers don't, or let me not say most times, but like some engineers really do not understand what you actually need to put in place in terms of security wise. All they just want to do is build. Because just imagine a document like this was originally an Excel sheet, just kind of like bunch of I think I still have it here. So yeah, this is it. Just kind of like, yeah, let's just come together and just put up something. Work. Let's go to this sheet. This is the crosswalk. You can see that everything is kind of like shipped into every category. Then this is the main open source project security. This is everything for access control. This is everything for build and release. Assign unique version identifier to all releases and software assets. Deliver project websites for version control system using encrypted channels. I mean, these are pretty standard stuff that you just kind of like might overlook. But when you have it documented and you're following it through, it helps you remember and it helps you grow. You might be wondering, where do you have to get your hands dirty, or where do you have to get your hands on this particular stuff? I mean, it's very, very pretty simple. Baseline.openssf.org. You get your hands on it, but you can come to the GitHub and why it's still, this is also a document that's also an open source project itself, which means you can also contribute to stuff like this. I mean, I think somebody recently just made a contribution of a spelling error. I like to just talk about the non-technical aspect of contributions like this, and for you to know that, okay, let's just go to the documentations, or the documents rather. It's pretty chilled. Yeah, this is where the compliance crosswalk is. I didn't even know it was there. Group shared that with me. I mean, it came from a general language kind of like point of. At the same time, you can contribute to it to say, okay, maybe this particular English or maybe how it is written here does not really tally with where I come from, but maybe you understand it this way more better, or maybe you should include this, or there's something that is kind of like very common in our society, and you just want that to be included. Why? Because there's no restrictions to where this can be applied, at least to the best of my knowledge. All right, yeah. So you can always come out to contribute to this particular project on OpenSSF. Accounts on GitHub, security baseline, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and enjoy. Bye.